In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly why you should be starting a podcast right now. And I'm also going to be answering a few common questions that I see when people are thinking about starting a podcast. Coming up. What's up, everybody? Karmacashflow here, and welcome to the channel where we help you generate endless streams of passive income by building online businesses. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about podcasts. Now, podcasts are a great way to get your name out there. Back in the day, I actually used to have a very popular podcast called the Supercharger Trading Podcast. And in the Supercharger Trading Podcast, what we did was we talked about trading in the currency market. And we became actually the largest currency trading podcast in the world with well over 2 million downloads in a single year and about 8 million downloads the year after that. It exploded, which means it got my name out there. And because of it, because I got my name out there with our podcast, it was actually able to give me a platform that I could talk about my products and services. And that's exactly what you can use it for. So I know a lot of you are trying to build your passive income streams, your cash flow streams. So using something like a podcast is very beneficial for you because it gets your name out there. You know, there's a saying that podcasts are the new blogging. And I'm not exactly sure who came up with that. It may have been Seth Godin, but I don't know. But nonetheless, it still is applicable. Maybe you're not the type of person that you like to be on video. I don't like to be on video. And I know that's a little bit weird because I'm on video right now, but I actually prefer to write. Everybody has their own way of doing things. And for me, it's writing. And no matter what I do, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a blog post, whether it be a video like I'm doing now, it all starts with writing, right? I write everything. And you can write out a podcast very easily, speak into a microphone. Like I actually have a microphone, not the microphone that I'm using now. I'm actually using a Rode NTG over on a boom, but I actually have a microphone set up on a boom arm so that I can go ahead and do my podcasts. And we'll get into the equipment and software later on. But I just want you to understand that if you are looking for a platform to stand on so that people understand what you have to offer, whether you're selling a course, whether you're selling affiliate products, it doesn't really matter. People want to hear you. And podcasting is a very viable way of doing that. Now, to answer some questions about how to get started doing a podcast, first thing I usually get is, number one is how to pick a show title. So a common question I see is, can I use my own name as my podcast title? Absolutely. All right. My podcast is called the Karmacashflow podcast. All right. My last name is not Cashflow. That's just what I go by, Karmacashflow. But that is what my brand is about. All right. Building cash flow. So I titled my podcast as Karmacashflow. But you have people like Tim Ferriss. It's the Tim Ferriss Show. Right? Or Ask Pat, which is Pat Flynn. So yes, you can absolutely use your name as your podcast title. Then you have brands. Can I use my brand? Absolutely. Again, my brand, Karmacashflow, is what my podcast actually title is. So yes, you can use that brand. You can actually use a topic as a title, like the Smart Passive Income podcast. You know, you have topic titles in that you can create a podcast title out of whatever topic you are doing. So one example is a podcast that Stu McLaren does called Marketing Your Business. And that's exactly what the topic is about. It's about marketing your business. And one thing that you can remember is that no matter what you name your podcast, whether it's going to be your name on the show title, whether it's going to be your product, whether it's a topic, it can always be changed later. Supercharger Trading Podcast, the podcast that I had for trading, actually went through 4 different iterations of podcast titles. It started off as the FST Trading Podcast because that's what my company was called, FST Trading. And then I had 2 other iterations of my podcast title before I found Supercharger Trading Podcast. So 3 or 4 times I changed my podcast title, and you can do the same thing. Now, real quick, before we actually continue on with the other steps, if you're liking this video, if you're getting some value from it, please hit that thumbs up button. It will help our channel grow greatly for the YouTube algorithm to do its thing, and I would really, really appreciate it. So let's move on to number two. Number two is the show description. With the show description, you need to pitch the people on why they need to listen to your show. And please, whatever you do, don't keyword stuff your description. A lot of people will go out of their way to find every keyword under the sun that matches their topic of the show and throw it all into the description. This is not what you want. You want to have a couple of keywords in there placed strategically, but you really want it so that a human being can read it properly. Not the algorithm of Apple, not the algorithm of Google or anything like that. A human being is what's going to actually read that description. So please make sure that when you write a description, that it is very informative and has a lot of information on why the person needs to listen to the podcast. So put in a lot of benefits on what they're going to get out of it. Number three is the podcast artwork, right? So podcast artwork is very, very essential. The basic size of the artwork is 3000 by 3000 pixels. But you got to imagine that when a person finds it on a phone where most people are going to find the podcast, you have to imagine these are really, really tiny on a phone. So you have to make sure that the person can actually find it and see what your cover is about. So let's just take one particular podcast artwork as an example. So this particular podcast is about mobile homes, and you can see right here that even with it being very small, it's actually smaller than my fingernail, you can still see that it says mobile home investing lessons, all right? This is a great example of what artwork should look like. Just remember, it has to look great small, because people are going to most likely find it off their phones, not off of their big giant 27-inch desktops. Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about something that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's scheduling your podcast. You want to be fairly consistent with your podcast, whether it comes out once a week or even once a month. You have to be consistent with the scheduling of it. No one wants to listen to a podcast that comes out 2 to 3 times a week for a month and then nothing the next month. You have to remain consistent. Now, when I first started my podcast, this is actually something I was very bad at, was being consistent in my scheduling. And for it, my podcast numbers suffered due to it. But once I got consistent, once I was able to schedule my podcast, it actually turned around for me. And I don't want to see your numbers fall simply because you're not being consistent. So what I would recommend is scheduling your podcast. If you're going to come out once a week, plan that. Make sure that if you decide to come out every single Monday, that you come out every single Monday. And scheduling that in your Google Calendar or whatever calendar you use, that will greatly help. Another recommendation that I have is that you batch record your podcast. So one of the things that I love doing is batch processing. So what that means is that I might write out 3, 4, 5, even 120 episodes. And then over the course of a day or 2 or 3, or if I'm doing 120, 5 days, then you're going to want to sit down, record them all at one time. So if you're going to do a show a week, maybe it comes out on Monday. That's really 4 shows per month. So what I would recommend is at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month that you sit down and you record 4 shows. That makes it so much better because you can record those 4 shows, actually edit those 4 shows in a single day, and then not have to do anything else for the rest of the month for your podcast. Again, this is something that I'm known for, is batch processing. I absolutely love it. And I didn't always do things this way. What I would normally do is I would write my show, then I record it, then I would edit it. And it would all be done in that same day for that one episode. And then guess what I had to do the next day? I had to do it again. So one of the things that I did was I actually found a video on the best ways to get better at podcasting. And it mentioned in there about batch processing. And when I heard that, it was like, boom, mind blown. So what I decided to do is I would write my entire week's episodes, because I was putting out multiple per week. I would write them out on Sunday. And then on Monday, I would record and I would edit every single podcast for the upcoming weeks. And I did it all in that one day. What I would do is I would write it out one day, and then the very next day I would record and edit, and I would be done for that next week. And I highly recommend that you do the same. Now, what type of equipment and software do you actually need in order to produce a podcast? Really, there's only one thing you actually need. and that's a microphone. And the easiest microphone to get that we all have available to us is our smartphone. The smartphone is literally the only thing that you need. There are a lot of people that will have these grand ideas that you need all this equipment in order to create a podcast, and that's not true. If you have a little bit of money, maybe you want to go out and get a microphone like this. This is a Samsung Q2U. I'll put a link in the description below for people that want one. This is really cheap, all right, in comparison to some of the ones that are out there. This mic is a USB mic. So you plug it in and this plugs right directly into your computer. So you can record anywhere you have access to a computer. There are even cables that you can get that you can plug a really nice microphone like this that's actually not that expensive. I think this goes for like $40 on Amazon, and you can plug it directly into your phone. So you have a top quality microphone being plugged into your smartphone that you already have most likely, and you can create your own podcast. So let's talk a little bit about software. What softwares do you need? Well, honestly, you don't really need much. You could put it up on something like Anchor, or you can use something like Audacity in order to edit your podcast. There's really not much that you need. In fact, I actually had a podcast that was fairly popular. I didn't do a whole lot to it, that I would go ahead and record from my phone and not edit it at all. It was raw. It was live. Not like what I'm doing with the videos, in that I'm cutting, all the bad parts out, where I screw up, where I'm thinking, where I'm going a lot, even though I do a lot of verbal pauses. But anyway, I cut all of that stuff out normally. But it's not something you absolutely have to do. I do recommend it, but it's not something you have to do. So again, you can use something like Audacity. You can use other things like Reaper or GarageBand or Apple Logic if you actually have an Apple computer. Or if you really want to get into high end, you can get into something like Adobe Auditions. But either way, you really don't need a ton of equipment or software. Like I said, basic, all you need is your phone. That's all you absolutely need in order to create a podcast. And I highly, highly recommend you doing a podcast. So question of the day: what type of podcast are you going to do? Leave a comment down below and let me know. So that's all I've got for you today, guys. If you like this episode, please go ahead and smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell icon so that you can get notified of any upcoming videos. So until next time, guys, remember, you are just one cash flow stream away from financial freedom. Take care, guys. Peace.